comes to voting. That said, when the states are taking over, the state legislatures are taking over the power from localities and from secretaries of state and from local county supervisors of elections and saying, oh, well, we can just decide what votes we're going to count and what votes we're not going to count. That's a big problem. Let's bring it right now. The chairman of the DCCC, Democratic Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney of New York, also with his former chief of staff to the DCCC, Adrienne Elrod. She was a senior aide to Hillary Clinton and Biden presidential campaigns, also former senior advisor to the House Oversight Committee, Kurt Bardella. He's also a columnist for the LA Times, the USA Today, and also an advisor to the DCCC. This is a DCCC day.
It is. And Sean says that our studio is the color of his dining room.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
Okay, very good taste.
Good taste. Done. So, Sean, everybody says that Democrats are going to lose. You look at the history, Democrats are going to lose. You look at the redistricting, Democrats are going to lose. Tell me why Democrats aren't going to lose in the House races.
I really look forward to the morning after the election when I get to come on this set, and we'll see what's right. Look, the voters will decide that. What we're going to do is fight for good jobs and good health care and safe streets, and we are going to end the pandemic and grow the economy. And the other side is trying to throw up barriers to voting and taking us back to an era when states' rights arguments were used to suppress the vote and to engage in racial discrimination. I think that's a good comparison in the swing districts, and we'll let the voters figure it out.
What about the blocking and tackling in the swing districts? Are your members holding town hall meetings every weekend? Are they knocking on doors every weekend? Are they doing the blocking and tackling that Democrats haven't always been good at doing in the past?
I think that's a fantastic question, and we've just moved a huge number of resources into early community organizing, into community engagement. Yeah, we're not just going to get back on the ground after the pandemic. We're going to build that back better. We are going to be in communities with cultural competence, with local people working who are trained to do so. I'm a big believer in getting away from the air wars we always fight, back to the basics. And so you better believe that we are going to be on the ground. And it starts with great candidates and great members of Congress doing their work and delivering on things like this infrastructure package, on things like ending the pandemic, on bringing resources to local police departments, which we're doing, and every Republican voted against. Those are the results we're going to be running on. We're going to deliver.
Hey, Kurt, there's you're a former Republican, I'm a former Republican. You're consulting with the DCCC right now. I don't know if you can say this, but have you noticed a cultural difference? Like Republicans, I've said this before. When I ran, I didn't run to win by 1 percentage point. I ran to get every vote, to get every dollar, and make sure that person would never ever think about running against me again. It was total political warfare. Now, we'd play it clean, but it was really rough. And it was an obsession. Yeah. I haven't seen Democrats, not a lot of Democrats with that intensity. Is there a cultural divide between how Democrats and Republicans run?
You know, I think that the biggest difference, certainly that I've observed, is that Republicans truly, they don't care if something is 100% right, 100% accurate, 100% factual. And Democrats really do care about the truth. And I think that it surprises them. I've had many Democrats ask me, do Republicans really not care? And my answer is, no, they don't care. They want to win. They want to pound you into submission. They don't care what it takes, how ugly it gets, how nasty it gets. They're going to do whatever they got to do.
Well, and let me just add on to this. I will say, in my experience, Democrats think they're right and everybody else is wrong. I mean, the Democrats that I've been around at times, that's not great when you're campaigning. It's sort of like, we always talk about DBT, and you got to open your mind and go, well, maybe some people listen to these Republicans and maybe they think that they're right. Maybe they actually believe. How am I going to beat them?
Right. And I think part of the challenge is, on the surface.
By the way, please don't tweet at me. I didn't say that skillfully. I'm just saying. But
no, I know what you're saying.
I've sunk now. I was trying to help, but I think I've just blown.
Let me help bail Joe out here. I think.
Please bail me out.
I think part of it is, on the surface, Democrats believe that, hey, we are right about a lot of these things. We are the party that is for democracy. We are the party that is for social justice and equality. And the Republicans are 100% not. But that in itself is not enough to win. It's not enough to be right. You have to convince the American people that there's something in it for them. Republicans are very good. In fact, the Republicans are better at Democrats in this, of using fear and weaponizing fear to get it electorally. And I think that Democrats are going to be a lot more aggressive in 2022. I think that Democrats are understanding that the stakes are so much higher now, that literally democracy is on line. We had a violent insurrection, and Republicans are out there. The law and order Republicans are out there saying it was just a tourist thing.
And so, Adrian, this is the thing. And so I guess I was like thinking like a Democrat going into the Trump election, because I thought, all right, this is very simple. This is democracy versus a guy who's got fascist tendencies. He's trying to get his attorney general to arrest his opponent. He's the guy's like calling the free press enemies of the people. He's trying to get some members of the press thrown in jail and executed. This is easy. He gets 75 million votes. Obviously, I missed something last time. So talk about how important it is, sort of the meat and potato issues. At the end of the day, a lot of Americans are like, okay, so am I going to be able to pay my bills? Is my street going to be safe? Is inflation going up? Is it going down?
Well, that's really what it comes down to, Joe. And let's not forget about the Access Hollywood tape, too. We thought on the 2016 campaign that when that came out, it's over. It's a done deal. But it really does come down to how does this vote, how does electing this person affect my everyday life, right? And that's why I think Democrats right now are doing such a good job on drawing a contrast on a lot of issues that do affect the lives of everyday people. I mean, the child tax credit, for example, huge thing that's going to hit mailboxes in mid-July. Democrats are really playing that up, and they are making sure that the American people know this was a Biden-Harris accomplishment. This did not just happen because these checks magically appeared. So you've got to make it clear. You've got to really drive in the point. What are you doing to affect the lives of everyday people? Same with infrastructure. I mean, I saw Josh Gottheimer, my old friend from the Clinton White House days, on earlier, talking about the Problem Solvers Caucus and how they're trying to work together on this. But that's what Democrats have to do. They've got to keep driving home those issues that affect the lives of everyday people. When I worked at the ECCC in 2006, Ron Emanuel was the chair. We ran on culture of corruption, Jack Abramoff, big lobbyist. I think those days are over. I don't know that we can run on like, Washington is corrupt anymore as the single issue. You've got to get down to what affects those families who are voting in this election.
And as far as taking credit, Eugene, of course, Republicans, a lot of Republican congressmen are taking credit for things they voted against. That's something Democrats need to call out.
Well, we have social media in this election in ways that we didn't, in 10 years ago, and people are being fact-checked in ways that they never have before. Beating media organizations at fact-checking and calling out lawmakers for saying that they did things that they really didn't do. And so I don't think that's going to happen and be as successful as it perhaps has been in the past. People will be held accountable just because we've seen it happen so far already.
Yeah, Casey, you have a question for the DCCC chairman?
I do indeed. Congressman, it's good to see you. My question is about how what's going on in Congress ties into these races that you've got to run. Bernie Sanders says he wants to potentially spend $6 trillion in an environment where inflation is a real concern. You're also talking about raising taxes. You've got suburban voters that are relying on stocks going up to protect their 401ks. Is spending $6 trillion a good political plan?
Well, look, I'm going to let Senator Sanders argue for his own plans, but what I'll tell you we all support is a strong infrastructure bill and also investing in America's families. You just heard about the child tax credit that's being rolled out. Every Republican voted against that, and we are going to hold them accountable. And we are going to build bridges and roads and broadband systems and good water systems. My district in the Hudson Valley, on a bipartisan basis, supports all of that, and also the measures in the rescue plan that are funding good policing at the local level, that are supporting local governments, that are right now ending the pandemic. We're growing this economy at 6-7% in the next 12 months. And in fairness to the Democrats, the president and Bernie Sanders would pay for their proposals, which is something the Republicans won't do. So I do think the results
so
are going to
be
what
willing to raise
matters.
$6 trillion in new taxes to pay for it? I mean, what's the right number in your view?
Look, the Congress is going to work that through. But what we ought to do is we ought to address the needs of working people in this country once again. We ought to show up with real results. And the difference between now and 2006 is that we're the governing party. And we're saying to the American people, judge us by our record. We have a record that we're proud of. We are going to deliver good jobs and good health care and safe streets, and we are going to grow this economy, and we have proposals to be fiscally responsible when we do it. I think that's a good thing.
Mr. Chairman, it's Willie Geist up in New York. I'm curious what you took away, if anything, from the results of last night's mayoral race here in New York City. Obviously, your district covers the northern suburbs. But after this long campaign, a former police officer, a guy who served in the NYPD for almost 25 years, a guy who was actually a Republican for a few minutes back in the 1990s, looks like, as of the first night of counting, he likely will be the next mayor of New York City. What do you take away from that vote in New York that you can apply nationally?
Well, I thought you'd never ask, so thank you for that voice from New York, Willie Geist. Good to see you again. Look, I think what you saw last night is you saw a Democratic Party that has both feet on the ground. That is a diverse coalition that is focused on good housing and good jobs and good health care, but is also going to demand safe streets and good policing. You saw in Eric Adams someone who understands both the need to keep fighting for racial justice in a country that is in many ways trying to go backwards on those issues, and we're not going to stop fighting for racial justice. But we're not going to accept the false choice either, that we should choose between racial justice and safe streets. We're going to do both. And that's what I think Eric Adams really represented. And by the way, if you look at the overall results last night, and I know we're still counting in this cardinal conclave of the Cardinals, when the white smoke goes up. I mean, I'm just a simple country lawyer, as you know, Joe. It's kind of hard, but in fairness, if you look, what the point is to allow a kind of more nuanced, aggregation of the voters' will. And what you really saw there was that candidates who support good policing and public safety really took better than 2/3 of the vote. And that's a very diverse coalition that put that forward. So I think you're going to see out of New York City a pretty good representation of where the Democratic Party is. And when you put that together with the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that we're going to get done, I think on a bipartisan basis, when you look at the really smart proposals the White House is unrolling this week, that Cedric Richmond just spoke about, to fight rising crime rates, that's the common sense combination of fighting for something that matters, but also keeping our streets safe at the same time. That's where the Democratic Party is, and I think that's what New York is telling you.
Mike.
So Congressman, taking that message, as you just sort of spelled out, taking it nationally, from locally, nationally, to the world beyond Twitter, where nobody is on Twitter, just living their ordinary lives, is it fair to say that you might be going to the country with the message that as Democrats, we're here to help you, and as Republicans, they're here to scare you?
We're here to deliver while they divide. We're going to fix, they want to fight. You better believe it. And if you look at what happened in that special election, by the way, in New Mexico 1, where they threw the kitchen sink at our candidate on these lies and distortions about what we stand for, we blew the doors off. And all the smart people in this town said we'd be lucky to win by 10. Our candidate won by 25. And she stood for something on issues of racial justice. But she also talked about what she was for with specifics, responded to their lies, but also ran on the record of this administration, which actually matters more than these Washington issues. What matters is whether the pandemic is in the rearview mirror, whether the economy is growing, people are making money, feeling good and safe in their homes. That's what we're going to deliver on, and that's the national message.
All right.
It's interesting you guys didn't get into a big fight.
Oh, come on.
It's not. It's fine.
The soothing blue color makes everything just
jump
feel
across the table
Why,
and separate.
why do I need to get into a fight? Why does he need to fight me when I blow myself up early on?
I do appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to be the one talking
All right.
The source of your Twitter trouble today.
Yes, no, it's all
Congressman
me.
Sean Patrick Maloney, thank you. Eugene Scott, Adrian Elrod, Kurt Bardella, thank you all as well. Thank you, Gabe.